The meeting of the Marquette City Commission is called to order on Monday, June 10th, 2024 at 6 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. City Clerk, roll call, please.
Commissioner Larson.
Here.
Commissioner Mayer. Commissioner Ottaway.
Here.
Commissioner Schlegel.
Here.
Commissioner Smith.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Hanley.
Here.
And Mayor Davis.
Here. Commissioners, we are missing Commissioner Mayer. I'm wondering if someone would like to make a motion. Commissioner Schlegel.
I'll make the motion to excuse Commissioner Mayer. He's off on personal work-related business.
Okay, do I have a second? Commissioner Ottaway.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. And we have an agenda in front of us. Commissioners, may I have a motion? Commissioner Smith.
I move that we approve the agenda as presented.
And a second. Commissioner Larson.
Second.
Discussion? Okay. All in favor, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed?
Friends here.
Motion passes 6-0. Welcome, everyone. It's nice to see so many people. I have a couple announcements. This year, Marquette is 175 years old. It's our semi-demi-septa sesquicentennial. It's so good. I know. I've been practicing that. Thank you. Thank you very much. So at the 150-year mark, we had a time capsule that was put in the ground to be opened 25 years later. So that means this year at our 175th. And the opening will take place July 4th at the History Museum immediately following the parade. So we'll have a little ceremony, and please join us with that. There'll be, I'm assuming, the city manager, myself, and the commissioners, some of the staff, and anyone else who wants to join us, hopefully some of the previous mayors. So keep that in mind. We'll have a PSA coming out shortly with more specifics on that. And the second announcement is a reminder that the draft of our master plan is out there, available on our website. Please take time to review it. We've had a lot of comments so far, some very positive and some recommendations for improvements. And so we do want to hear from you. And this is an important document that sets our path forward for the next 10 years, and it belongs to the community. It doesn't belong necessarily to the city staff or the city commission. So please do take the time to read it and comment on it. And that's it for my announcements. And so since my announcements are done, let's move on to the public comments. Comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address, and we have our first person coming up.
I'm sure you all don't know me. My name is Margaret Brum, and I live at 404 East Magnetic Street. Come on, that was the funniest I've ever been. I'm here tonight to talk about something I really haven't spoken that much about, and I actually brought a sign, which I'm going to hold up, and I think it meets the requirements for not being too big or too loud. But this is a sign indicating there is a new Facebook group in town, and I'm trying to make sure the camera sees this, and it's about UP Large Animal Rescue, and it was started by my friend from Parkview, Kathy Ruprecht, who is taking the lead amongst a number of different organizations and inputs within the area to try to get people trained into how you do large animal rescue. A week ago, we went to Autrain for a day of training, and after they said that if you were nervous around horses, the horses would pick up on your nerves, I excused myself from the practical. But there were people in that training in Autrain that came from as far away from Lance and from Traverse City. So this is the next big thing in terms of transportation of animals. What is happening is Kathy is trying to put together this Facebook page to gather input. She's got a whole bunch of links on here to available training that's free, like videos about trailers and how law enforcement personnel have had difficulty with some homemade trailers, getting them open, and recommending that there be some training on just that aspect of getting a special trailer open. There's also, and I'm going to just hold up the signs to make sure that people have a chance to write it down. There's also a lot of information about the number one cause of barn fires, and that includes chicken coops and bunny hutches, which we have within the city limits. The number one cause of those fires are space heaters. And Michigan is in the top 5 of barn fires throughout the because we have animals and they get cold. And that's another thing. I don't know if our ordinance covers the use of space heaters, and I don't know if it should. But I do know that this issue is going to come up. There was a terrible horse fire on the East Coast in the last weekend, and there's over 100 horses in the barn. Last count, they had lost 80 of them. So when a barn fire hits, the animals generally stay put because they think it's safe. So again, this sign is to get people to know about this Facebook group, to talk to Kathy, and also for you as city commissioners to have a look at that ordinance about chickens and bunnies and see if it has anything to do with how they're heated. Because everything around animals is flammable. Everything they walk in the barn with, everything they walk on, everything they deposit, everything they eat is incredibly flammable. Thank you for your consideration of this. I'll leave the sign with the clerk.
Anyone else for public comment?
I'm Dennis McCollin. I live at 27 Elder Drive, although my house actually faces Center Street. This is with regard to the master plan. A neighbor sent out an email alerting us to something that, although it doesn't say so by name, is obviously by description recommending that Center Street be pushed through from Elder Drive through to McClellan. The reasoning given on this, to quote, "Dead-end streets are to be connected when possible to help shorten trip lengths and diffuse traffic loads." If you look at the reality of the situation, you will see that this applies only to a very small subset of people who happen to work at Whitman Hall or Weston Hall and live in the northern 3/4 of the sector bordered by West, Woodland, Fair, and Wright Street. Anybody else going anywhere else or coming from anywhere else is still going to have to use Fair or Wright and will not be able to go through Center Street. And these people, even if it was cut through, could shorten their commutes by a maximum of 1.5 blocks. Hardly worth doing. Okay, a secondary reason for this that was given was areas not favorable for walking or biking, and they have the potential to become more walkable or bikeable by eliminating dead ends and constructing missing sidewalk segments. Now, constructing missing sidewalk segments is a joke. In a 12-block stretch of Center Street, there are exactly 3 blocks of sidewalk. 1 block of that is on the north side of the street, 1 block of that on the south side of the street, and the 3rd block is right smack down the middle of the right-of-way. This is not something that's going to be an infill project. So we'll let that one just go by. The other thing is that there's a false premise here that this is in fact a dead end. It's a dead end only for automobile traffic. It is a perfectly through route for pedestrians and bicycles and is used on a regular basis. And I would suggest that the author of this plan could have visited the site and seen that for themselves. I'm hoping that the quality of work put into this plan is not indicative of what you see in the rest of the plan. So there's improvements to be made. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment?
Hi, my name is Becky Lloyd. I live on, I'm nervous, Altamont Street. I own Becky's Roadside Refreshment. I know some of you know me, but I make dairy-free ice cream and authentic Italian ice using premium ingredients, and it is a delicious product. I just took over the Island store, so I'm super excited. Wanted to say hi to everybody. You're gonna get to know me because I have excellent products, and there are 22 flavors. There'll be 25 shortly because my puree shipment came in, and it is all handmade. I make it, I pack it so it stays fresh. There are, let's see, 12 dairy-free ice creams, and there are 10 right now of the Italian ice. And they're all made with real fruit purees. It's simple ingredients, and it's delicious. And it's something I hope y'all enjoy. I think in the next couple of days, if we get some heat, then we will actually enjoy the Italian ice more. But I wanted to say hi and let y'all know that I'm new. It's dairy-free. Please tell your families and let everybody know that if they have any lactose issues, then I'm their girl. All right, thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, I will close public comment, and we will move on to our presentations. Our first presentation is our fiscal year 2023 audit by Mike Rentz of Anderson, Tackman and Company. And so, Mike, if you would come up to the podium.
I'm told I can have as long as I want. We can go over in detail everybody's favorite time of year, better than Christmas. I got two that I'm gonna look at, the audit report, which I know you have as a PDF, and then a packet that we just handed out a little while ago. You don't have to follow along if you don't want to. I'm trying to keep it simple, so if anybody has any questions as we go through, feel free to ask. For those that are following, page 17 is the opinion. So you had a unmodified opinion. You complied with all the generally accepted accounting principles. It says they're your statements, not ours. And we don't look at every single transaction. We take a sample of them. Kind of flipping over to page 36 and 37, looking at the city in total. The city added about 5.4 million to the bottom line, and 6 million of that was in the business type funds, which is the utility funds, and the general funds. All the other funds lost about 600,000 for the year. In looking at page 36, where it leaves you with a positive position of over $85,000, but a unrestricted deficit of about 15,000. But you have to remember you have the MERS, the pension, the OPEB liabilities on the books like everybody else does. And those two alone are 2.8 for OPEB, and if I can find the MERS off the top of my head, is about 47 million. So big numbers, but everybody has those numbers, so it's just a matter of keep whittling away at it. You're paying what the actuarials are telling you. It's just a matter of time going over with that. The biggest fund that has any effect and everybody wants to look at is the general fund. That is where, if we look on page at the end of 154, the general fund ended the year with a positive increase of about $98,000. Considering everything that's going on, that's pretty good. Especially considering you were projecting a loss of just over $500,000. So that is really good to see. If we kind of flip over to this package now, looking at the first one is just looking at the cash and equity over the last 5 years. You can see your cash and investments has kind of slowly depleted over time. Nothing significant there. Your fund balance has stayed pretty much flat over that, or it's come down a little over time. But if you look at your 60 and 128 or 120-day benchmarks. That's expenditures. Those have stayed fairly constant. So when I'm looking at this, you've been using fund balance a little bit, but you're offsetting your expenses accordingly over time and trying to live within your means. Looking at the next one, over the last 5 years, is there any significant changes in revenue streams? Nothing significant, so no significant changes. Looking at the next one, is just looking where the money is coming from. This year, 66% of your total revenue is coming from taxes and PILT money, compared to 64,000. That's pretty much everywhere else. You look at the state and federal sources, this year it's 18%, last year was 21%. Now that a lot of the state and federal money is slowly starting to dry up after COVID, you're gonna start seeing that number slowly dwindle over time again. Looking at the next graph, looking at the expenditures over the last 5 years, you know, not significant changes other than the transfers in and out. And that's where you're moving money to other funds to fund projects. And that has some volatility, but it's all based on the projects and the funds that you're doing those projects in. And that's where, if we kind of look at the next one, we do a 5-year trend of just where are those transfers going. And you can see like major street fund, that has, depending on the project, has big changes there. Lakeview Arena has some. What's nice to see is the debt services transfers are starting to come down. Internal service has some fluctuations, but it's all depending on what you're doing with projects and funding sources, because the general fund kind of covers shortfalls anywhere else over time. And that's where, if you look at the last graph here of where's the money going, and you can see there's not much change between 23 and 24. The biggest one's public safety at 39% both years. Next one, public works at 21% for both years. So, you know, you're doing everything kind of equitably, you could say, over time, that there's not big swings in the expenses there. And then the last page is, for those that incline, you can trace the numbers here in the graphs back to the audit report. Show of hands, has anybody done that? No? The last thing I want to end with is, we had one non-compliance issue this year. There was a few lines that were over budget, but with a budget this big, nothing that surprises me or is concerning in that respect. So it's kind of, as you're closing things out at the end of the year and where things come, some adjustments need to be made. Other than that, I don't have any other issues in the report this year. I think it went very well. The staff does a very good job here. The board's doing a good job of looking at the budget and living within your means. And that's the short version. Does anybody want a longer version? I could go all night.
Thank you, Mike. I'll turn it over to the commissioners if you have questions, comments. They're all studying. Yeah. Commissioner Smith.
Thank you for the presentation. I know it maybe isn't the most exciting, but it is one of our most important jobs on the commission to make sure that we've got the finances in order. If maybe we could get a little bit of information from the city manager about the one piece. She had mentioned something about it was due to a legislative change at one point. I was just wondering if we could get a little more on that. if that would
City
be all right.
manager.
Yeah, if you don't mind. And I'm actually going to take a glance over at Mark as well to help me with that, or Mike, I'm sorry, as well. It wasn't necessarily a legislative change, but more maybe along the lines of a change in accounting standards, or legislative, correct me please, that had to do with the way that we budget as a city, and looking at it from the fund level, and changing it more towards that department level, or even even narrower than that. Can you help me explain that one, please?
Yeah, so if you look at page 128 and 129 in the big book, it actually shows where it was. And when I'm looking in here, the general fund had the biggest over budget, and that was the transfer out. And Major Street had a big transfer out. And those were two things that kind of came is wrapping up the year where projects needed to be moved. That's where those two items came from, that you kind of accounted them for one way, but as we got in there, it was like, that's not quite the way we were looking at it. So if I'm looking at page, and I'm flipping around a little bit, on page 154, it actually has a list of where those transfers were and what you had budgeted for. And the big transfer, if I'm looking here, was the major and local street funds between what you had budgeted, looking here. The motor pool fund, that's where the big one was. That's almost $1 million right there of once we started getting some of that motor pool activity of what's grant, what's not, and what needs to be covered, some money had to be shuffled around to cover that. So it wasn't that anything was done wrong or even poorly budgeted. It was as the final adjustments were coming through and it's okay, it needed to be accounted for this way. That's where some of those came. And that's one of the things with, as you're doing projects at the city, okay, you budgeted for the project, but sometimes we have to break that into the different funds, and that's where the budget can get a little out of whack at the end.
Clear as mud. It made sense to me, who speaks finance and accounting, but I think that maybe perhaps even during budget session, we maybe focus on this a little bit more and kind of talk about it in those real terms as we look at real projects, without having those projects listed here or those purchases or specific line items, perhaps maybe a little bit more detail on that one during budget. Hope that helped.
It did, thank you.
Okay. Pro Tem Hanley?
I was wondering, I mean, we just got this very big book and haven't had a chance to really dig too deep into it. If the city manager would tell us what she thinks is the most important parts of this, so we can kind of
City
focus.
Manager, could you kind of walk us through what you look at and what you feel are most important things for us to?
On a very high level, I do have some kind of go-to pages that I often reference and that I think you'll see probably a little bit more used than not in this one and in other financial statements that I do take a look at within the community. And yes, I think that Mike had covered really some of those that we look at, like the governmental fund balance statement, or balance sheet, and then the statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. That one covers your governmental funds, like that general fund that you spoke of, the major other funds like the major streets, local streets, some of those bigger activities in there. And I go to those because those are some of our more volatile funds, and that we see a little bit more of that activity, so I do pay attention to that. But please note that these statements are based off of fiscal year 23, which is about 6 months, or about 6 months ago, almost. So while we look at this now, it's a point in time that happened a little bit ago. So we do look at it in that context, and as we go forward, especially with the budget too. A couple of other points and pages I do look at within the footnotes specifically, I pay close attention to that long-term debt schedule. It's really one that I frequently visit and I look at. That covers the principal payments. It does also disclose and list the interest payments as well, and that kind of helps me understand where these stand and what we are paying out each year. I also look at that interfund transfer page that Mike just referenced as well, and that helps explain where some of those general fund transfers go. Because when you look at it, especially let's say last year, It's significant amount, and it's easy to say, well, that's where they're burying everything. Well, no, if you follow it, you then see where it's going specifically and how far our general fund does go within general government, but then also how we subsidize a lot of that road work that we see and some of those other activities that our funds go to. Yes, it covers debt as well, but that's where we can go back to that interfund transfer or that long-term debt schedule too. I also look at fund balances just to see where we always are starting at. And then some of our OPEB and long-term benefits like our defined benefit pension plan, I do look at that as well within our footnotes. So those are kind of the quick ones. I also want to point out that the statistical section is probably more of the fun ones. That's not necessarily one that you see in every city's financial statements, but this is one where you see 10-year trends. So you can follow along with revenues and expenditures on where they've been over the 10 years. It also shows things like our top 10 taxpayers or our top taxpayers from now and compared to 10 years ago. And let me tell you, it's startling in some ways to see how much has changed, but it also allows us to focus on where we have some of those bigger industries and some of those real contributors to our tax base. So it's something to really look at. And then, just going on to required supplementary information, which is before that, that just goes into more detail of what you see. So, did you catch all that? I did.
The other one that I'll add in is that I look at, if I'm just coming in cold, is the RSI for the MERS and the OPEB schedules on like page 136, because the thing that I always look at is you're paying in what you should be paying in, but if I can see here, so if I look at yours on page 136, is there's a line, net investment income, and that plays a major role in what your liability is going to be, and you have no control over that number. So if we look at 23, your investment income was a negative $4.6 million. So that increased the liability that much. That's totally outside your control. That's purely MERS market driven, where the year before you had a $5.6 million increase. So that MERS is, when they're figuring out what you should be paying, they're thinking you're going to be making money every year. Well, they lost money in the 23 year, so that's increasing the liability. That's nothing you've done, but that really affects the funding level. So you can say, oh, why did I go from 67% funded down to 58% funded? It was that one line. If you think about it, I'll make life easy. Instead of making $5 million, you lost $5 million. That's a $10 million swing right there in that number. That's totally outside of your control, but it has a big effect on what the liability is. So I always kind of look at those numbers because they really move the needle at the end of the day when you look at the front statements.
Other comments, commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Ottaway.
Yeah, Mike, thanks for all of this again. Just one quick question to you, because to me, just on the outside, really, big numbers looking at it. If we look at the graphs and charts and just listen to you, it sounds like things are really improving over time for us. Seems like it's flatlining. Are you happening to see, just in your time doing this, any trends or any opportunities for us that we should be aware of?
The trend that I'm seeing probably is the revenue that you can generate in some respects is shrinking, with the change in, if you go back to the statistical section and look at where your taxpayers are and what those dollars are, that moves the number. And kind of looking forward of, okay, what is going to happen if we do this, we do this, we do this, or developers or whoever does something from that standpoint. And that's what's going to drive the boat, because if you only have X amount of money in the pot, that's what you can do for projects. And I think you're, with Mary and Karen here, delving into that budget of kind of saying, okay, here's the revenue that we have, and then coming to the board, here's the expenses. What projects do you want to do? Because you're going to have to pick and choose. You can't do everything that everybody wants, and it's kind of living within that means until that debt number comes down. Because if you, one of the two biggest numbers in here are MERS payments, OPEB payments, and debt payments that are set in stone. You can't change those two numbers until that stuff starts dropping off, and that's going to take a little while before we hit there.
Makes sense. Thanks, Mike.
Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. I think some of that information helps us as we go into our budget season, which is coming up, and we're all looking forward to it. Will also give us a lot of study material prior to.
There we go.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mike. Our next presentation is by Tina Morin, who is the Director of our Arts and Culture, and she is going to give us an update on the cultural trail.
Invite your partners and they come. It's so nice. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to update you on the City of Marquette Shoreline Cultural Trail. I'm very pleased to be here. A few things I wanted to say before I begin. What you're about to hear about is it's a team effort. And I want to thank the manager's office, Community Services Department, John Swenson, and all of the staff there. The staff at the Arts and Culture Office, Tristan Luema and Amelia Pruitt. Team members without this would be impossible. And of course, every partner here that's been a part of the committee or the process from the very, very beginning. Shout out to Amelia Pruitt. I am not the tech savvy person that makes things look beautiful. Tristan and Amelia do that. Amelia did this. And I don't usually read from a script, but given my allotted time and my history of being long-winded, I'm going to do something very unnatural and read from a script, and you'll be very happy that I did. So, you all received packets last week that show you that this is a very large project, and it's much more than signs in the ground. This is a cultural planning and public space design project. Years' worth of history and other city projects. Those projects have laid the groundwork for the cultural trail. The city's public art policy and our growing public art program have been instrumental, but also very critical was the city's 10-year Arts and Culture Master Plan, now in its final year. This plan opened the door for this project by successfully transitioning the Arts and Culture Office from a programming entity to becoming a resource hub focused on capacity building. Shout out to Walt Lindola, who was chair of that committee when that took place. Lots of project partners. The Cultural Trail has activated partnerships, new ones and deepened existing partners from across all the city's cultural institutions. For 8 years, we have engaged environmental, tourism, cultural, civic, and tribal partners. I'd like to acknowledge those partners that are here tonight. If you've been interviewed or been a part of this project or are involved, could you please stand up just really quickly if you're here to let the City Commission know who's here? And there are about 180 that were invited and lots of emails saying, I'm so thankful to be a part of this job. Thank you. It's never been about checking the boxes, but rather building relationships and creating sustainable alliances. It's taken a long time, but that has allowed us to build trust and work at a much deeper level. Yet we are still learning and building new relationships. For example, we have worked with individuals and citizens from the Sioux Tribe Council, but not Sioux Tribe, but not their council. And that was new knowledge to me. I have a lot more to learn. We will continue to engage KBIC, but also invite other tribal nations from across the Upper Peninsula. We're also still developing and learning how to work across city departments to better and be more effective colleagues. Through these partnerships, we've secured 1.2 million, and all of this was leveraged by $30,000. That was that initial leveraging from the city's public art fund to 57 to 100. It's literally how it happened. And that was made possible through the public art policy. Through this funding, we were able to bring in Urban Ecosystems, a design team that we have worked for 6 months. And there is the major sites on the Cultural Trail. Listening sessions. In February, Urban Ecosystems met with longtime project partners and new ones, and we heard from every single one of these organizations that are on that screen, and their members, and their staff, and their volunteers through hundreds of hours of listening sessions. City staff, for-profit, nonprofit, more and more. That's a lot of people and an incredible amount of information. And this is what we've heard. We heard across the board was the Cultural Trail is a citywide asset, that it's a transformative project for the city, and the shoreline is the spine that connects it all together. We also heard, just like in the community master plan, you heard that water is the prevailing theme. Water is the center of our community for every single person, regardless of age, culture, or location of residence. But it's not about changing our shoreline at all. This project is about revealing the places that already exist. It's about enhancing access to public spaces and connecting them to all the significant places and destinations, cultural institutions, sectors, and districts within our community, but also connecting each site's multi-layered stories, past, present, and future. There's no better example of this than Lighthouse Park. Everyone knows the incredible maritime history that they do so well at the museum. But it's also significant Anishinaabe historic village site called Snagging Fish Point. So there's lots of layers of stories at this one particular site. The long-term vision for this trail, this is a living trail, an ongoing storytelling process of the entire shoreline from the Carp River to Presque Isle. It's much, much more than a trail. It's the city's cultural infrastructure, and we're striving for equitable access to continue to define public space for community events and gatherings, to increase access to local knowledge, stories, and wayfinding. It's truly a cultural corridor. As you've heard, and our partners know, it's been gaining momentum, and sometimes we even have a hard time keeping up. Actually, there's 2 students here that are doing a laser light show of the 7 grandfather teachings that will be happening during Art Week, and we haven't even built the trail yet. But just the idea and the process and the relationships have been making things happen. So it's gaining momentum, it's expanding, and you can see we're just in the middle. Next year, the Cultural Center and new trailhead is opening. But what's happening right now in 2024? Here we go. We have established 8 sites for 8 story markers and identified additional future sites. So you can see the original 8 are there, but through community feedback, they'd like 14. There they are, because there's 14 significant sites. Here are a few examples of designs, and these designs are based on that public feedback that Urban Ecosystems, he has developed these designs along from the public feedback. And keep in mind that these are just initial concepts. Updated versions based on feedback that we received in April, and lots of partner homework will be available during Art Week. So these are concepts that we're working with. Notice the story cart. Someone wanted hands-on and not always going online. It's important that each site will be designed and curated for each space's unique characteristics, and we want to use landscape to enhance that experience. So you'll see different sizes of signs, almost little living rooms, and urban forests. So stakeholders, there's some things that they informed us. There are key elements that they said we need to have included in each design, and that's dual language, public art, and most recently incorporating medicine wheel colors, not only to bring another cultural connection, but also simple navigation. We're also going to, in Art Week, you'll see more visual representation of water, increased use of wood or stone, and variety of shape and sizes depending on these sites. And the cultural trail experience. So this is much more than signs. It's an experience that our office will manage and develop alongside our partners. Activities and programs like Art Week, virtual resources like those we're actively building on the Marquette Compass, and in partnership with Smart Zones Make It Marquette. And most importantly, the individual group experiences that will just occur at each site. So lots of different ways of engaging with this trail and its knowledge. So future vision. I didn't start getting nervous until just now. Story markers are just phase one and are just one element of this trail. Urban Ecosystems was also contracted to provide expanded designs for phase two. These are long-term visions, and I'm going to share 3 of these long-term visions. We want to make sure that we enhance the user's experience by utilizing the surrounding natural environment, vistas, landscape, and existing cultural infrastructure. In other words, place revealing, which is a phrase that everyone seems to be really enjoying. So let's look at a Lighthouse Park first. Lighthouse Park essentially really is a really amazing maritime campus. There was some sentiment and quotes from the listening session. Some of them included, "It feels private. Not sure if I'm allowed to explore there on my own." So with the cultural trail, we recommend using simple pathways and little story markers to welcome people and to encourage exploration. A place where you can go and spend the whole day. Space number 2. Matson Park. Matson Park, located in the heart of the city, are festival grounds in the backyard we play in. Listening sessions included that it's hard to navigate. Where does it begin? Where do you enter? It feels big to hang out by myself. We recommend creating a smaller, more intimate space that doesn't impede on festival grounds, but enhances the park overall. And basically, a landing zone. Essentially, a zone that welcomes visitors and provides a space for small events. And again, these are spaces that you'll be able to access those stories and that knowledge, and you'll be drawn to spend time in. Then the next big one, the ORDOC. The ORDOC wasn't a part of this initial grant for the NEA, but everyone kept saying, why not? It's essential. It's the centerpiece. So we said, okay, let's explore it. It's a point of pride for our community and great curiosity for newcomers. How do we engage people and take them to the next level? So we recommend providing access, allowing people to experience the cathedral-like effect of the massive timbers of iron that speak to our heritage and our promise to preserve our heritage and tell our entire history. A place where we can get out into the lake and can experience a natural shoreline year-round. It's always been an important landmark and historic monument. It's a monument to early settlers and immigrants, and we ask you to consider the ORDOC, like the lighthouse, as a major piece of our cultural infrastructure to be included in this plan. These are really big projects, big projects, but as a city, we're already doing big projects. Associated with just this trail, we are engaged in capital improvement projects directly and indirectly. The new trailhead and center at Father Marquette Park and Lions Lakeside Park. And this month, we'll be reaching out to our partners, and tonight, I know that you have a contract before you to work with an architect to design that park. The new Peg Hervinen bandshell to be built next summer, which honors Peg, but also her family's Finnish heritage and legacy. The city's first large-scale indigenous public artwork, the 7 grandfather teachings installed next week, and the dragonfly sculpture at Kids Cove. We are also in many ways partnering with multi-million-dollar projects along the shoreline. The Lake Shoreline Restoration Project was a significant part of the NEA funding request and vital to our success in getting funds, because we said we were telling a full story that was accessible along the shoreline. And it's a part of the trail's job. We need to tell the story of why that project is being done. It's a story about the power of the lake, climate change, climate resiliency, and the cultural stories of the lake. This trail is also going to honor past generations, notable women like Holly Greer and the bike path she championed, which is literally the groundwork that was laid for this trail. And Joni Miller through the dragonfly sculpture symbolizing her dream of an all-accessible children's playground. So, We need you to buy into this long-term vision and support a living trail that doesn't end with 8-story markers. And how are we going to do all of this? The first big step is to fully integrate the cultural trail into the community master plan. This is a citywide initiative that belongs to the entire community and will tell our entire history. This is critical for all of the future funding proposals and the kind of funding proposals we as a city want to secure. We need to demonstrate that this is a part of the city's overarching master plan. This is a long-term vision that expands the idea of recreational corridor into a cultural corridor, connecting cultural institutions, industry, city parks, and recreational areas, downtown, neighborhoods, schools, and irreplaceable historic landmarks and natural features. Carl's Overlook is there, and I don't have the quote memorized, but it really is where it all began. I want to thank you for supporting this project so far. I know it's been a lot, and we really appreciate all of your support, and we look forward to engaging you and the entire community with all the updated designs during Art Week. Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. That's a lot of stuff. I'm going to turn it over to commissioners. Comments? Questions? Commissioner Smith, we'll start with you.
It's a great presentation, a lot of work. Thank you all for coming tonight. I appreciate you being here and putting in the work. I can see the vision. I can see how exciting this could and hopefully will be in a lot of respects. And, my concern and my job as a city commissioner is the funding piece. And I hate to be the person that says it out loud, but that's, when I look at like the ORDOC, that's really the one that is the hardest for me to envision, because we've had other groups come to us and it's, millions to replace, and we can't even get all our streets reconstructed at this point in time. So I'm not trying to be a naysayer. I hope that there is some way that it can happen, but we have to be a little bit of realists in our role up here too. So other than that one piece, I see the beautiful vision, and I'm hopeful that we can work together to achieve the majority of what's in this plan.
Yeah, and I have to say, for Urban Ecosystems has already been researching grants for projects that size. And I think that's the importance of having it as a part of the master plan, because for someone a foundation to invest that kind of money, they need to know that there's buy-in and support for it. It would never come from the taxpayers.
Commissioners? Commissioner Schlegel.
Thank you, Tina. Yeah, a nice job keeping within parameters that we've seen you destroy in the past. Well done. This is just something that is incredibly aggressive and incredibly exciting as far as I'm concerned for the community. We've got so many years wrapped up into this. I remember back in the early 2000s working on different projects that kind of were going to lead us into the direction of what you guys are finally putting together. And you've taken all these partners and all these layers and stacked them together. And somebody had to grab that thing by the horns and get them to work together and put this together. And it's just amazing to see these people that are here tonight, between the History Museum, the tribes, the Lake Superior Partnership, all of these people and more give their input to put it together. There's not one issue here that's more important than the other that I'm seeing. And that's really exciting. Each one of these sites, the proposed sites for the future, are equally as important to our past and where we're headed for the future. And it's just a compliment to the work that you guys put together. To do it so respectfully and accurately is just something that I can't thank you enough for being able to take this and put it together as a unit. So I'm really looking forward to it. Of course, I agree with you, Commissioner, on the funding aspect of this, but I know that there's lots of rocks to get turned over out there, and you're going to find that those avenues to make these projects happen. And I just hope that my kids are able to stick around here in the future to be a part of that, because there's, as a commissioner, I'm very proud of the things that we get accomplished at the cost of other people's efforts, of course, but I like to go back and remember that stuff with my family and my kids and say, boy, we always thought that this road wouldn't ever get replaced along the lake shore, or we thought maybe the island might wash away at one point in time many years ago, or all these different things that we work on over the time. And it's just, what a compliment to you guys and everybody involved. And I just, again, thank you for all your efforts.
Pro Tem Hanley, we're
Thank
just going to
you.
walk down the.
Apparently, we're just going straight down the row. I want to thank you. When I first saw this on the agenda and saw it, I was expecting something completely different. I won't lie. I thought you were going to come in and tell us about the 8 sites, which I would love to have that too. And I can email and get like a little more in depth than that. I love what you guys are doing with this. This plan is huge and amazing. And I really hope it can come to fruition at some point. You guys seem to be very ready to make the charge to do it, planning out the grants and things like that. Obviously, as all the commission will say, money is the issue for everything that we do in every way, but we also know how important our arts and culture and the values are in our city and for our people. So I think this is a great project and I would love to see it keep going forward. But if it's okay if I email the city manager or you to get, because I kind of would like to know a little more about each individual site. It's not something that I found in this, and I would love to see that information as well.
And in those packets that I sent, for the first sites were based on the Hinsdale map of the original native sites that are 5 within city limits. There's more, but those are also the same sites of major industry in our current looking at development. And so that's kind of looking at the future of that trail as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Commissioner Ottaway.
I mean, why not, right? Everyone else is saying something. So, Tina, awesome job.
Thanks.
Amazing job, actually. And to bring this crew with you, all I guess we can say is thank you to all of you for all of the hard work you've done. I just look at this and kind of bouncing off of some of the other comments. As someone who lives in Marquette, this gives us a lot of pride. I mean, we can take our kids through here and really explain to them what this area means. Shows tourists what the area means, obviously, but for me, this is something. It's like a history of our city, and it's needed. It really is. I love the vision here. I'm not concerned really with the finances of it, because if you're able to get this type of support, you're going to find the money, and I have no doubt about that. In fact, I will say this is probably the most encouraged I've ever been for something to actually happen with the ORDOC. And all of my time remembering that, I think that this is a positive plan that can get some financial backing from private parties. So kudos to you on this, and kudos to all of you. This is amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Larson.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for giving this. Thank you to everybody again. But I guess you're doing it right. Public engagement, bringing people to the table, bringing many groups to the table, and having that input really helps coalesce around some of these things that you're working on doing. And I think you've got a variety of from small scale to large scale. So things that can be accomplished in the short term,
Right.
and things that you can kind of dream about and move forward to and still make happen. So I guess my one question to you say we need to incorporate this into the master plan. How engaged with the master planning process was the team, and does this need to come to us to say, hey, we need to be considering that if it hasn't been already
I think art's got in the way of that, because we do have a master plan, and I don't think it's any fault of anyone. It's just that, the arts has a plan, and I think what we're trying to get across is that this is about our culture, and culture is everything that's listed in the master plan. I know Tara and I were talking, and it's about that connectivity throughout the city, and the DDA, is considering, how does this trail connect throughout the whole city? How do we connect with Wildcat Way? How do we really work this way and connecting points and viewscapes kind of together? So environmental lens, cultural lens, design lens, all of it, economic development, it's all together. And I think it would be nice to see that. That's going to carry this, it's going to make this trail happen, if it is.
Then I guess it's my turn, huh? There isn't a whole lot more for me to say about how wonderful this whole process has been, and I know it's been years in the making, and I'm sitting here looking at Fred Stonehouse, who was a previous commissioner and mayor, and who has always had a real strong interest in the cultural trail. And I suspect that that's why he's here tonight to hear more about what's going on with this. And it's pretty overwhelming to hear, but I know that it has been a lot of work over several years, and the collaboration, as Commissioner Larson talked about, is just pretty amazing with the number of people and the different groups. And I'm very happy to have met your consultants and sat through one of those sessions. And actually, when you put up the pictures, I realized I sat through one at last year's Art Week. So I sat through 2 of these that, that I'm happy to do that. I like the idea of place revealing instead of place making. That was a new term that I learned once I looked at this stuff, and I do feel we do have so much to reveal in Marquette that that we can be proud of. I have all kinds of comments here, but I think most of them have already been said. I'm going to just kind of end with a combination of Commissioner Smith and Pro Tem Hanley. I was hoping to see the actual designs of the 8 sites. And I kind of got the feeling throughout this that maybe we thought they were this, but they could be so much more. And so then my question is, do we currently have the funding to actually complete the installation of those 8 sites by the end of this fiscal year, as we would like to see them?
Right, so the goal for this fiscal year, that's why it's just a story marker. I mean, to get this kind of design and community input for these sites would not happen with the money that we have. So that will just pay for these story markers, and then the rest of the sites, we need to decide as a community which ones, we prioritize and start working with our partners. And it's interesting that you say everyone's kind of overwhelmed. I don't think any of us are overwhelmed because we've been in it for so long. We're like, we're there, now we're coasting in a way, because it's been a part of us so long, and we're not going to do this alone as a city. Now we've established these partners that together we're going to activate these zones. So the story markers, I know that with our partners, we're working on QR codes. So you might not see a sign with like lots of language. We want to show that through design, through artwork, but you will be able to access that through information about that site online on the Compass. And we're building out a cultural trail website as well. So then we'll see, but there is funding in the wings as soon as we see these designs to apply this year if we want more funding to see the full
So
landscape.
do I hear you correctly that by the end of the year, we will basically have these markers, and that's what we have funding for?
Right.
And then we envision each of those spaces to be more so.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
All right.
Thank you.
And when we have Art Week, and I know that you're wanting more input from the community on Art Week, will the community be able to see these markers?
They'll be able to see
will we be
concept
able to actually
designs.
see them and comment on what they will look like?
They'll be available. The architects for the new space will be available during Art Week and doing listening sessions with partners. People will be able to see all the concept designs, including the final story markers and the larger phase 2 designs as well. You can see it's such a sensitive thing and it continues to be sensitive. You can't have enough community feedback for this. We want to make sure we get it right.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tina. And thank you to all of those of you who have been involved in this over the years and will continue to be involved. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, that was a lot. Let's move on to the consent agenda. So commissioners, I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda. Commissioner Ottaway
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
and Commissioner Larson.
I'll second that.
Any comments on this?
Nope.
Commissioner Larson? Anyone else?
I believe we need a roll call. vote.
Yep, we do. We need a roll call vote. So city clerk, would you conduct the roll call vote?
Commissioner Larson,
Yes.
Commissioner Ottaway,
Yes.
Commissioner Schlegel,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Hanley,
Yes.
and Mayor Davis.
Yes, motion carries 6-0. And we will move on to new business. We have one item, the architectural service for the Cultural Center and Trailhead. City Clerk, could we have the background, please?
Thank you, Mayor. The city was awarded both a Michigan DNR Spark grant and an MEDC RAP grant to transform the former Chamber of Commerce building at Father Marquette Park into the Marquette Cultural Center and the trailhead for the Cultural Trail. The city advertised an RFP for architectural services and received 4 proposals. M1 DTW Architects of Detroit, $165,600. Studio Rad LLC / Lebanon Anchor Architectura, $146,100. Locus Architecture Ltd. of Minneapolis, Minnesota, $128,570. And Majewski Architects of Marquette at $149,800. A team of 5 staff members evaluated the proposals based on the following criteria: professional qualifications of personnel, relevant experience in designing distinctive architecture that integrates the built and natural environment, experience in designing cultural facilities, galleries, and/or projects of similar size and scope, project management experience, cost, references, and office location. Based on these criteria, Locus Architecture Ltd. of Minneapolis, Minnesota was the highest scoring firm. Staff has worked with Locus and the city attorney to develop a standard professional services contract. Fiscal effect: design for this project is a reimbursable expense through the MDNR Spark grant and the MEDC RAP grant. Recommendation: award the bid to Locus Architecture Ltd. of Minneapolis, Minnesota, approve the contract, and authorize the mayor and clerk to sign. Alternatives as determined by the commission.
Commissioners, I'm looking for a motion. Pro Tem Hanley.
I move that we award the bid to Locus Architectural Ltd. of Minneapolis, Minnesota, approve the contract, and authorize the mayor and the clerk to sign it.
And a second, Commissioner Schlegel.
I'd second the motion.
Comment? Commissioner Schlegel.
Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm getting a little picky, but is there any thought to whether or not there would be benefit to having a local architecture firm do something like this versus somebody that's 2 states away?
If we can turn that over to the city staff. I'm curious as to, yes, I appreciate there's a cost difference, but I'm wondering what set them apart from the other, especially the local architect.
Yes, and as it was stated, there were 4 proposals that were received, and there were local firms that had submitted a proposal. And there is a scoring criteria that we do look at, and we had several staff members that sat on that team to explore and score those. And I do look towards John Swenson to maybe clarify on some of that discussion that had occurred, or that scoring criteria, and where we landed with that.
Yeah, so the scoring criteria is kind of laid out, and there's points assigned to each one of those. So staff kind of went through and really read the proposals and really kind of got into the nuts and bolts of it. So one component of that is the office location. So obviously anything local is going to score higher there. There was a lot of great proposals, in the bunch, and the local folks scored well. The realistic piece with Locus was that they just had a lot of actual experience that resulted in very good projects. So there were some other firms that had a lot of design concept stuff included within the proposals, but not as much that would have been relatable to this type of a space. So some of the groups had more experience with much larger spaces than this. And this is going to be a fairly small space that's going to be challenging to do what we need to do in a way that is beneficial to the community in such a small space. Locus had actually put forth a few things within their proposal that demonstrated to us that they could do that very well. So ultimately, a lot of good proposals, and this one came up to the top. So we always want to include the office location within any of the scoring criteria, because we want to do our due diligence and make sure that if there is something here that's going to fit the bill, we're going to be able to consider that and make that a piece of the scoring criteria.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any further comments or questions, Commissioner Schlegel?
No.
Okay. Other commissioners, comments, questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion, say yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Which brings us to our second public comments section. So comments may not exceed 3 minutes per person. Please state your name and physical address as making public comments. And if you choose to make a public comment, please step up to the podium.
Margaret Brum, as I was saying briefly before, large animal rescue takes place typically because a trailer or some vehicle hauling large animals gets into an accident and the animals need assistance in recovery. I need some help from the chief of police. How old do kids have to be before they don't have to be buckled into a car seat? Over 16, okay. We have in modern society today the most comprehensive rules imaginable for when people are traveling. If you're traveling in the front seat, everybody's got to wear a seatbelt. If you're of not full age, you could be in the back seat, you could be buckled up 6 ways, rear facing for some ages, forward facing, and you're supposed to have those car seats checked every 6 months to make sure they fit and everything's good. However, what I've learned, and again, I don't do the practical side. You're never going to see me out there leading a horse. But what I've learned is traveling with animals is a potpourri of different types of transport vessels. And what most people don't understand is there is no way to secure any animal into the back of a trailer, even the way you're secured into a vehicle with a shoulder and lap belt. There simply isn't any way to secure them even remotely that safely because they are a different configuration. And so one of the things that my friend Kathy recently encountered is she had to take one of her horses to Green Bay for consultation, and she almost got smucked, which is a word from Parkview, twice by people who forced her to slam on the brakes in order to get out of their way. And the problem is not with her up front because she is buckled in. The problem is with her horse in the back who cannot be safely secured. So one of the things the Large Animal Rescue Service will be focusing on is reminding people, if you even think that the vehicle next to you has animals in it, pigs, horses, cattle, llamas, lambs, anything that is on 4 legs, keep in mind that if they get tapped, those animals are going to tumble, and most of them cannot recover without space and help. So the very best way to do large animal rescue is not to have a problem in the first place. And I think all of us live with the idea that our vehicles are so much more safe than they used to be. There simply isn't any way to make the transport of a lot of animals as safe even as driving to the store. So the last message I have for everyone is when you're driving home tonight, I will bet you will see someone transporting animals. I mean, I didn't, until I started working with this group, I didn't look for it, but it's everywhere. And so please, please, don't play chicken with them. No pun intended. Don't force them out of your way. Thank you very much.
Anyone else for public comment?
Fred Stonehouse, 875 Oriana Drive, Marquette. I said I wasn't going to say anything, and my apologies. Wholly in favor of the plan. The plan is brilliant. It's going to be a benchmarker for a lot of communities, I think, to be able to see what Marquette was able to do. So I thoroughly support it. I would ask just for a couple of caveats as the plan is developed, and that's to look at the harbor and look at the water with great sensitivity. Marquette has a working harbor. We have 250 or so small craft that are anchored in the harbor. We get cruise ships in. We have one coming in a couple of weeks. We'll have 3 next year, I think. We have Coast Guard cutters that are in. We have NOAA ships that are here and a variety of other craft. So it is a working harbor in all regards. So as we love our harbor to death by incorporating it into a new plan, be careful what we ask for in the plan, that it still continues to support that activity. Just do it softly, I think. I would caution that. We also should recognize that the boatyard that we have in the city of Marquette is the only boatyard on the south shore of Lake Superior until you get to Bayfield, Wisconsin, or until you get to Sault Ste. Marie. So that little boatyard is very important for a lot of people. And again, as we build our dreams and aspirations around the lower harbor, we need to think of that and make accommodation for it so it can continue to do what it does. The ore dock is brilliant. The idea of what they want to do with the ore dock and an internal structure, that is brilliant. And I can't speak highly enough of that, of trying to solve the historic problem of what do we do with it and do it in a way that is valid for the long term. And certainly that would be. But I would also then ask you to look at what are we doing for the other ore dock? Because the Ellis and I dock up at Presque Isle is a working dock. It is the only dock in Lake Superior that continues to be open to the public. In other words, where you can go right up to, as we all do, and watch the ships load, and if they're unloading, watch them unload. That's a rare thing on the Great Lakes. That's the only one. So as we look at one dock in the lower harbor, we should at least think in terms of some sort of interpretive center based around the upper harbor dock. So the two work together. The lighthouse pathway out to the point, brilliant. In fact, you know where that came from? It came from the first plan that Ken Chapsky did for Lighthouse Point. So that's been in the works, i.e. in public view, for probably about 10 years now, since we made the property change. I commend them highly. If there's anything I can do to help pull that wagon or push that wagon, please let me know. I'd love to do it. I think I've got about 1.5 years before I can do anything according to the charter. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone? Okay.
Dennis McCowan, 27 Elder Drive. I thought I'd take a second pass too. Tina's presentation, earlier in it, had a slide of the painting of the message down on the bike path near the lake, which I like that. I think it's held up really well. It reminded me that there's a similar message painted on the bike path in the Center Street right-of-way, which is pretty well worn off by now. I think that's a measure of the comparative level of pedestrian traffic that those different sites see. And I think if you did a pedestrian count over there, you would find it vastly exceeds a number of the sidewalks down in the Central Business District. And it's precisely because that street is not open to automobiles as a through street that it is a safe corridor for pedestrians and bicycles. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Anyone else? Seeing none, I will close public comment and we will turn it over to comments from the commission. And I'm going to begin to my right with Commissioner Ottaway.
No comment.
Huh. That's unusual.
Just taking Fred's notes.
Pro Tem Hanley.
I've got nothing.
I was already too long-winded, but all I would say is that with all the people coming to town with summer starting up, please watch for people in crosswalks and look out for the people that don't know Marquette that well, and get excited about Art Week next week and look into those. You'll see things posted online. 2 weeks? 2 weeks. Thank you. And you know, there'll be some postings on what goes on and what day, and take advantage. Thank you.
Commissioner Smith.
I don't have a lot. I guess I would just say, you know, Marquette Schools lets out tomorrow. Be a lot of kids riding bikes, walking on sidewalks. Just take a little extra time and watch for them. Other districts are already out, and I've already seen a lot of those kids down at our beaches. And I know we're getting like that safe warning system installed, so we'll have some additional safety protocol in place for summer to know whether or not it's safe to swim. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Larson.
Sure, a couple things. I didn't make a comment earlier, but yeah, I think during the audit presentation, he said a number of times we're living within our means, and so I think that's really a testament to this, our management and staff here at the city. So thank you for helping lead that way for us to live within our means and trying to slowly climb out of where we're at. Other than that, I think we've got we're still within that 63-day master plan review, and so I know Dennis McGowan has come up and has made some comments for us, but it's also online. So I think I don't know if the comments here will automatically transfer over, or if we need to also recommend to Dennis to go out to the city website and put the comments in writing, so then the city will also review it in that way. So there's a couple different ways to make that happen, and so that's open until July 18th. Then finally, regarding the master plan, I asked Tina about this. So this plan isn't currently included in our master planning process. Is that this would be a question for staff? Is that the case? And if what she says is true, saying, hey, having it incorporated into the master plan will really help with finding additional dollars because it shows the city is behind it. What is the process? What does that look like? And is that, I mean, we're in a review period right now. Would that open up a different review period at a later point in time if we wanted to move to incorporate that fully? Or because it's an official city document, is that kind of in there already? So that's a weird roundabout question.
So City Manager, do you want to respond to that now or during your comment period? Okay, well, I'll let you save it for your comment period, so you have a moment or two to think about it. But yes, Mr. McGowan, thank you for your comments. I've been kind of inundated with comments from your neighborhood about extending Center Street. I do not believe the master plan speaks to Center Street directly, but to that west area. But know that I'm hearing it, and every time I get a comment, whether it is in an email or in as a phone call, I am passing that along to the staff who are in charge of the master plan. So when things like that, when you comment on the master plan to any of us commissioners, I think we all pass that along to the appropriate people. But if you want to do so directly, it would be via the website. But please, and I appreciate every time someone does comment on the plan. What? And to the Planning Commission. Well, it goes to the Planning Commission too, yeah, of course. Yep. So earlier today, I had the privilege of welcoming Jocelyn Benson, our Secretary of State, to Marquette to open up the mobile Secretary of State office, which I give her a lot of credit for bringing the government to the people rather than what we used to see with the Secretary of State, where you made an appointment, you went in there, you pulled your number, you waited in line, and hopefully you got what you need. But she's really made an effort to bring the government to the people, and know that is, it's available for any event or venue that you choose to have. We have a dedicated mobile Secretary of State office here to the UPMA. I mean, I have a driver's license that's due in November, but I'm fortunate. I have a car, and the office is within walking distance for me. But not everyone is like that. Perhaps people who reside at the veterans home or are unhomed or at the senior center, people who have difficulty with their eyesight and can't access the services online. So it's a very important thing that she has brought to the UP, and it's centered here really in Marquette. So I was really happy to do that. And the last thing I have is that Friday is Flag Day. And that is a day that in 1777, we adopted our national flag on June 14th. And interestingly enough, on June 14th, 2 years before that, was the start of our U.S. Army. So it's a day that you can appreciate your patriotism and fly your flag. So please do that. So now I will turn it over to you, City Manager.
Sure, and to address those questions about the master plan and where this plan would fall into that. So I think that at this point, we have been talking about it within the Parks and Rec master plan and the Arts and Culture master plan, and those are appendices within the community master plan ultimately, and they complement that well. There's also an opportunity for this to be included in capital outlay. In that listing, which is also ranked within some of those identified priorities, and that does take into consideration grant funding. Some of the things that we are also doing with new assets that are added into the city's system is also putting a cost component for maintenance into that, because we think that is a very important part of this as well. While we identify funding to bring the asset to life and bring it here, there's also this extra added component for the legacy of that, but then also continuing to have that operate and function. And that includes, things like, for example, shoveling a sidewalk, or also replacing that sidewalk or maintaining that infrastructure underneath, which can be a little bit more costly. So those are the things that are considered with larger projects like that. But I would probably wait to have maybe a more formal answer from our city planner and our director for community development on why specifically that is included in perhaps Arts and Culture master plan and Parks and Rec master plan, and not as a component of the city master plan. I think that the city master plan is an overarching document that covers many things and also has statutory requirements included. And so we do try to fit that in as well. And we do see the significance of this project and of this trail as the culture of our city. But there's also larger discussions that occur with that, and perhaps maybe a subset as well, and in more of a focused effort there is more appropriate. But again, I'd probably wait to ask those experts if you don't mind, but I can certainly follow back up. That's all I have to.
That's all you have, huh? Okay, well, we will conclude this meeting at 7:19 PM.